The $4,095 Japanese micro R-vee that rattled the global market is finally heading for the United States of America, and the timing could not be worse for dealers holding high-priced compact rigs. A price this low isn't supposed to exist in this market. It challenges every assumption buyers were trained to accept. Dealers know it, importers know it, manufacturers definitely know it, because once a camper this cheap becomes a real option on United States of America soil, the old explanations for why everything had to cost so much start to sound very thin. The only question left is how the market reacts when the first containers actually touch down. The announcement. Nobody could ignore this time. The first time people heard about a $4,095 Japanese R-vee, it sounded like an oddity, a local deal, a factory special that might never leave Asia, easy to dismiss if you had inventory to move. This time, the clues lined up differently. Import brokers began circulating copies of booking confirmations, showing compact campers loaded for routes into West Coast ports. Freight forwarders quietly added a new model code to their manifests. A small but serious distributor filed the paperwork needed to bring a batch of Japanese micro campers into the United States of America under their own name. None of that looks glamorous on camera. There are no fireworks in a customs form, but in this business, those are the signals that matter. They mean someone has put real money on the line to test this rig in a market that was told for decades that such a price was impossible. Industry watchers stopped asking whether the $4,095 camper was real. They started asking how many would arrive in the first wave and who would be forced to respond once they did. The $4,095 problem. The industry cannot explain away. For the recreational vehicle industry, the number itself is the problem. $4,095 is not just lower than the competition. It is lower than what many United States of America manufacturers pay for a bare chassis before they add a single cabinet or window. Entry-level compact R-vees built domestically often start at several tens of thousands of dollars and climb quickly with options. Buyers have been told that safety, quality, and modern features justify that climb. For a long time, there was no credible counterexample to test that claim. The Japanese micro camper does more than undercut on price. It undercuts the story. It shows that a road-legal, functional, travel-capable rig can be built for less than some households spend on a used car. Even if compliance costs and margins push the United States of America final sticker higher, the reference point has changed. You can tell the panic is real by how carefully the topic is avoided in official statements. Companies talk about premium experiences and full-sized comfort, but they rarely say the actual number that is twisting the knife. $4,095. What the United States of America spec version actually looks like. The version heading toward the United States of America is not some stripped shell with a mattress thrown in the back. It is remarkably close to the domestic Japanese configuration that caused all the noise. From the outside, it still looks like a small, well-kept commercial van that has been given a second life as a camper. Compact length, manageable height, square lines that would look more at home in a delivery fleet than on a postcard. That is deliberate. The body stays within common parking and height limits, and it fits naturally into shipping containers without wasted space. Inside, the design stays minimalist and purposeful. A convertible bench becomes a bed. Storage modules line the sides, simple but sturdy. A compact kitchenette with a small cooking surface and sink uses removable water containers instead of complex hidden tanks. Overhead lighting runs in straight, serviceable lines. Ventilation exits out the rear with a fan sized to the cabin, not to a marketing bullet point. The changes for the United States of America are subtle. Marker lights and reflectors adjusted to meet local standards. Certain electrical components swapped for versions certified under North American norms. Airbags and seat mount details aligned with local regulations. None of these alter the core idea. It remains a simple, efficient, low-cost R-vee that answers one question very clearly. Can you travel and sleep cheaply without feeling like you are camping in a cargo bay? The evidence. This time is hard to dismiss. Rumors about cheap imports surface all the time and almost never materialize. What makes this wave different is the paper trail. Freight booking entries show multiple containers reserved under chassis codes that match the Japanese microcamper. Customs brokers have documented advance filings where the vehicle description, weight, and dimensions match the known specifications of the $4,095 rig. A small group of independent import specialists have quietly confirmed that they have been approached to handle inland logistics once the units clear port. On the retail side, a few niche dealers have begun whispering about upcoming ultra-compact imports, without naming the brand. Their internal training notes, shared off the record, include talking points about explaining the difference between a minimalist Japanese microcamper and a traditional compact R-vee sold on their lots. Could all of this still fall apart? Yes. Shipments can be delayed. Regulations can change midstream. Currency shifts can alter the business case. But taken together, these signals look very different from the vague promises and blurred prototypes that usually surround too good to be true announcements. This time, the pieces line up like a real launch, not a fantasy. Why Japan can still offer this R-vee at a price nobody wants to compete with. The obvious question is how this price even survives contact with the United States of America. $4,095 sounds like a factory gate number that should be destroyed by freight, compliance, and margin. It does not vanish because the Japanese builder has been designing the entire system around cost from day one. Components come from high-volume suppliers that already serve multiple industries. Hinges, latches, panels, wiring harnesses, insulation, and fixtures are produced in large runs for commercial vehicles, then repurposed for the micro camper. That scale keeps individual part costs low in a way boutique recreational vehicle builders in the United States of America cannot match. Labor is organized around repetition, not customization. One main layout, a limited menu of options, and a production line that moves more like a small commercial van plant than a traditional coach builder. Workers repeat the same tasks in predictable sequences, reducing errors and rework. The body and interior are engineered to avoid expensive processes. Lightweight materials that carry color and texture from the mold reduce the need for multi-stage painting. Flat, modular interior panels install quickly without elaborate carpentry. Plumbing and wiring are routed in straight shots instead of weaving through decorative structures. Shipping supports the same goal. The entire rig fits comfortably within standard container dimensions. Several can travel together, spreading the cost of ocean freight. The factory sits close enough to major ports that inland transport costs stay low. Put that all together, and you get a simple truth. The $4,095 starting point is not magic. It is the sum of 100 small decisions to avoid waste. Those decisions do not evaporate when the camper crosses an ocean. That is why, even with added costs, the Japanese rig can still arrive well below what most domestic manufacturers want to admit is possible. If breakdowns like this help, you see the real pressure points before they show up in glossy ads. It is worth staying connected. When you hit like, it signals that you prefer hard numbers and quiet shifts over marketing noise. When you subscribe, you make sure you see the next round of changes before they reach the showroom floor. And I would genuinely like to hear how this lands on your side. Would you trust a minimalist import that starts life around $4,095? Or do you think the risks outweigh the savings for the way you travel? Drop your thoughts and questions in the comments. The more perspectives there are, the clearer the picture becomes for everyone watching this market move. How the regulatory wall finally cracked. For years, one of the strongest shields protecting domestic R-vee pricing has been regulation. Bringing any foreign recreational vehicle into the United States of America means facing a long list of rules around crash safety, emissions, lighting, glass, and electrical systems. That process is not fake. It exists to protect people, but it has also been a convenient reason to explain why low-cost imports never seem to arrive. The Japanese engineers behind the $4,095 rig appear to have designed with this reality in mind. They did not take a domestic market curiosity and try to force it through the system later. They started from a small commercial chassis already close to meeting international standards. They chose components that have close cousins in other markets. They avoided exotic systems that would require custom certification. On the policy side, importers leaned heavily on existing categories rather than trying to invent a new one, classifying the rig in a way that aligned with known inspection paths, cut down on surprise requirements. Documentation was prepared early, tested with sample units, and adjusted before full-scale shipments were even scheduled. Does that mean the regulatory wall is gone? No. It means someone finally found a door in it. That is a very different situation from the vague "maybe someday" conversations that have surrounded many foreign micro-campers in the past. Now that a pathway exists, it becomes harder for authorities to say no to future batches, without making their motives look political rather than technical. What United States of America dealers are doing right now. Even before a single Japanese micro camper shows up on a local lot, the psychology changes. Dealers live and die by how fast they can turn inventory. Anything that slows that down, especially on the compact end of the lineup, gets attention instantly. Some smaller dealers have already begun quietly trimming prices on their most basic units, not by advertising panic sales, but by making sure that whoever walks in the door leaves feeling like they got a better deal than last year's buyer. A few $1,000s shaved off here, and there is an insurance policy against being stuck with rigs that suddenly look overpriced once the Japanese imports go on display somewhere in the country. Floor plan lenders are watching too. They know that if compact rigs become harder to move, the loans secured by that inventory become riskier. Conversations about aging stock and extension terms become a little more pointed. That pressure flows straight down to the lot, where managers are told to tighten trade in values and push volume while they still can. Sales staff are already rehearsing the conversation they will have when a customer points at a picture of the Japanese micro camper on a phone and asks, "Why is this one so much cheaper than yours?" The answers they have been given focus on space, features, and perceived quality differences. Whether buyers accept those answers once a real alternative exists is another matter entirely. The used market feels the first tremors. The used market often reacts faster than new inventory because private sellers have less room to pretend. When someone needs to sell an older compact R-vee, they cannot ignore what potential buyers have just seen online. There are already hints of listings sitting a little longer than they would have a year ago, especially in the smaller, simpler segments. Owners who would once have held firm on a certain asking figure are now getting low offers referencing that cheap Japanese camper and are deciding whether to accept less or wait. Rental fleets are adjusting too. Some companies that specialize in compact rigs are considering bringing in a handful of the Japanese units on a trial basis, just to test demand and durability. Others are quietly cutting rates on existing small models to ensure they remain attractive in the face of news about a cheaper future option. None of this is a collapse. It is more like a long, slow exhale. Values that were built on the assumption that there was no real alternative at the low end are being questioned. That questioning alone is enough to shave a little off the top each time a sale is negotiated. Over a year or two, those little pieces add up. Will it really be $4,095 in the United States of America? There is a reality check hiding in the details. The famous figure belongs to the factory gate in Japan, not the window sticker on a lot in the United States of America. By the time the rig arrives here, a few more layers have to be added. Ocean freight adds its own share, even when container space is used efficiently. Import duties and port fees add another slice. The compliance work, while streamlined compared with more complex rigs, still costs money in testing, documentation, and legal review. Then there's the margin that distributors and dealers need to keep the lights on. Put all of that together, and the most realistic scenario is not a $4,095 retail price in the United States of America, but something higher. Maybe it lands somewhere between $7,000 and $9,000 once everything is counted. The important point is that this still places it dramatically below the majority of compact new R-vees available domestically. Even at twice the Japanese starting figure, the camper forces a comparison that makes many other entry-level rigs look bloated. The legend of the $4,095 micro camper will continue doing the psychological work, even if the final local price wears a different number. Who this micro R-vee is actually built for. Not everyone should or will rush to put their name on a list for the Japanese import. It is not meant to replace the big feature-packed rigs that function as rolling apartments. It sits in a different category entirely. The most obvious buyers are the people who have been watching the R-vee world from the outside for years, convinced they could never afford to participate. For them, a simple, low-cost, road-legal camper that provides a dry bed, basic cooking, and shelter from the weather is enough. They want mobility, not a status symbol. Mobile workers, seasonal crews, and people with jobs that shift locations see another angle. A micro camper that is cheap to buy and simple to maintain becomes a flexible roof near wherever the work is. No yearly leases, no security deposits, no long commutes from distant rental housing. Urban dwellers who cannot store a large rig may see it as a weekend escape pod, parkable in tight spaces, usable as a second room when stationary, and small enough not to feel like a burden during the week. Rental agencies are watching too. A fleet of minimalist campers, designed to be easy to clean, service, and turn over quickly, could open a new tier of low-cost rentals aimed at people who have never rented an RV before. For buyers who want deep storage, multiple slide-outs, and hotel-style comfort, this will not be the answer. For those who see a recreational vehicle as a tool first and a lifestyle object second, it might be exactly what they have been waiting for. The risks buyers need to keep in mind. None of this removes the need for caution. A low price always makes it easier to overlook the fine print. Warranty coverage on the Japanese micro camper is unlikely to match the extended plans sold with high-end domestic rigs. There may be 1-year coverage on major systems and shorter periods on smaller components. If something fails, replacement parts may be inexpensive but not always close at hand. Waiting a few weeks for a specific panel or latch to cross an ocean is different from picking it up at a local warehouse. Long-term durability is still largely unknown. Lightweight materials and minimalist structures behave differently over a decade than heavy, overbuilt frames. The rig might hold up very well, or it might demand more ongoing attention than some owners expect. Early adopters will be the ones to find out. Insurance classification could also be a question mark. Some carriers may treat it like a converted van. Others may invent new categories and price them cautiously at first. Storage, security, and local rules may complicate things in certain cities. None of these are reasons to avoid the camper completely. They are reasons to think clearly. The $4,095 story is compelling, but the real cost of ownership will only become obvious after years of use, not on the day the keys change hands. What this means for United States of America manufacturers, for domestic builders, this moment feels less like a product launch and more like a mirror being held up. The Japanese micro camper shows in a very concrete way how much cost can be removed when design, supply, labor, and logistics are aligned around efficiency instead of tradition. Behind the scenes, product teams are already being told to simplify where they can. Fewer floor plans, fewer bespoke cabinets, more shared parts between models. Every change is presented as a way to deliver value, but internally, everyone knows the real motive is to create room to move on price if the Japanese import gains traction. Supplier contracts are being revisited. Builders are asking whether certain parts can be sourced in higher volumes or from different regions to knock a few % off the bill. Some are considering smaller, more modular rigs that could be built faster and cheap, even if that means stepping away from the deluxe image they have cultivated. At the same time, marketing departments are preparing their counter-narrative. Expect to hear a lot about space, comfort, and domestic support networks. Expect to hear subtle warnings about the risks of unproven imports. The industry will not attack the Japanese rig directly, but it will do everything it can to reframe the conversation around what it believes it still does better. Whether that works depends less on slogans and more on how painful buyers find their existing payment plans when they compare them to the new baseline. How to position yourself as a buyer in this new landscape. For current owners, the first rule is simple. Do not panic sell. A $4,095 camper existing on the other side of the ocean, or even in limited numbers in your country, does not erase the value you still get from your rig. If you were always going to use it heavily for several more years, that plan still makes sense. If you were already considering selling soon, it may be worth seeing how local prices move over the next season. Watch what similar rigs are actually selling for, not just what they are listed at. Pay attention to trade in offers on compact models. If numbers start to slide, you will know sooner than the spreadsheets do. For shoppers, the advantage lies in observation and patience. Instead of rushing to buy before everything changes, look for patterns. Are compact rigs being discounted more aggressively in your region? Are dealers quietly adding incentives to move entry-level inventory? Are used listings on certain classes taking longer to sell? Rental pricing can be a useful indicator too. If local fleets begin dropping rates on smaller campers or trialing new micro units, it usually means they expect more competition and are adjusting early. The goal is not to wait forever for a perfect bottom. Markets rarely give that kind of clarity. The goal is to avoid walking into a lot blind to the fact that the definition of cheap has shifted. Use the existence of the Japanese rig as leverage. Question whether the features you are being asked to pay for actually matter to you. Push back when you are told a price cannot possibly go lower. When your personal timing, the right model, and a favorable market moment line up, you can move with a lot more confidence than the average buyer who only heard the headline and never bothered to read what it. Japan didn't just release a cheap camper. It introduced a number the entire United States of America RV industry now has to answer for. $4,095 is no longer a distant headline. It's tied to real shipments and real buyers. Maybe this won't be your your rig, but its shadow will sit behind every price you see from now on. How you respond to that shift is up to you. Tell me in the comments, does a price this low change the way you look at the market, or does it raise new questions? If this helped you stay ahead, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next change before it hits the lots.